Maybe the real trash were the bad opinions we heard along the way. Although we're called cosplays from trash and pretty notorious for using trash, trash isn't really what I like. It's more of the hidden potential behind it. Keep in mind, trash is just something that other people have discarded, like refuse, because you refuse it. That's why that word is that word. I definitely wouldn't call myself a formal educator because my methods are relatively haphazard, to say the least. And even though I say oftentimes I have no idea what I'm doing, I've kind of learned a lot along the way, so I kind of know what I'm doing now, and there really aren't any mistakes when it comes to cosplay. I mean, my parents taught me that lesson, and they made a huge mistake about 3.5 decades ago. Finally starting to feel a little bit better after my surgery, so the Trash After Dark content for Berlin for November, that's in progress right now. My poll for December is coming up soon, but I haven't even done the Berlin ones. But anyway, thank you to all my patrons over at Patreon that have been patient about that, because when your appendix explodes, it's very inconvenient, by the way. And now, a word from our sponsors.
Hey, do you like knowing what month it is and pin up cosplays? Kyle, do I really have to say
Lyle,
this?
just say the lines. Can you not sound so bored while doing
Dude,
it?
who wrote this?
It would sound better if you didn't sound like you were incredibly bored.
Well, you're in luck, because at CFT, we made a calendar for 2025. Patrons are eligible to additional discounts, but head on over to cosplaysfromtrash.com and use this discount code to get 10% off. Could you have written this like any
Lyle, this isn't hard.
You're on the calendar. Why am I the shirtless
We're
one?
the only other one working today.
Kyle's being weird, so whatever.
Anyway, let's go to the video.
Waste is always going to be with us, and therefore trash will always be with us. Keep in mind, pretty much any resource that exists can be wasted in some capacity. Oftentimes we think about waste and trash like things you throw in the trash can, but keep in mind that time's also kind of a commodity. So if you waste that, and just in the same way that you can waste money or time or stuff, I guess all three of those go hand in hand. And for people that say, oh no, I don't waste any time, I've seen how much Candy Crush you played, I am watching. I am not. FBI, I am not watching. And it's pretty much impossible not to accidentally or on purpose waste one of them. In the same way that those three are tied, those are more like meta ideas. So if I talk about something like some part or fabric, that is just an extension of materials and effectively the same as all the other stuff. The biggest mistake that I see people make in terms of like how they relate to waste and cosplay in general, and is this thing on? It is great. Is letting perfection be the enemy of good. You may not be able to do something efficiently, and because a project would take you twice as long as someone else, you may not want to do it because you're going to be wasting time. And it's like, well, I have definitely been a victim of that, a victim of my own circumstances. So regardless if it's time or a fabric investment or anything like that, if something doesn't look the best, or if it took too long, or if it didn't cost the amount that you initially wanted it to be, you may be extremely frustrated and think that you wasted one of those three precious resources. Even though I get most of my stuff for free, like mi basura preciosa, it's still a resource to me, and so I don't like wasting it. I know that kind of sounds silly that I don't like wasting trash. I get it. I'm the exact same boat as other cosplayers, both newbies and veterans. Like, I don't want to waste my time or materials or money if I ever have to spend it. The best way to combat this is by changing your mindset. I sound like a self-help guru here, and I am not qualified to be a guru. If you can kind of recognize that trash will always exist and waste will exist no matter how efficient you are in any capacity, you can kind of help deconstruct what you are actually viewing as waste. You know, this is not necessarily a novel concept, but like these resources that are using time, money, and materials, those can be learning processes, and that is highly valuable. You are literally using a resource to get something out of it. The things you get out of it are a sense of accomplishment. You gained a new skill. You had fun doing it. You have a cool new outfit to wear. There are so many tangible things that even if you weren't efficient, just because you did end up having to waste time, materials, or money, that doesn't mean that the end result is not worth it. Even though I started making cosplays from trash because of limited resources and funds, one way that really helped me change my perspective on this, and I've had a lot of feedback that people have felt this exact same way, using trash, if you end up generating the physical materials, since like, you know, we're visual people and that's what we're thinking of, one of the biggest, I guess, impediments to kind of getting over this hurdle is definitely the materials aspect, because that's the most tangible. But like when you actually see the wasted materials, that can like stymie some of your growth and like your feelings on things. If you're kind of using trash and you end up generating more trash, that's not necessarily bad, because, you know, it's a zero-sum amount of trash. There are many different ways you can kind of like get over your fear of waste, whether it's time, money, and materials. I mean, using things like old bed sheets to practice sewing, or just kind of trying to vampire, I think that is a verb, and to kind of like vampire all of the resources you can out of physical objects. Those, for lack of a better word, it's just really freeing. Turning old linens, bed sheets, and clothes into other things is definitely the best example of this. I surprisingly use handkerchiefs. I know that I'm one of the few people, I think, in the world that still does. But every handkerchief that I've had has come from old clothes that I was going to throw out. If one of these handkerchiefs gets lost or stained, or I, decide I don't want anymore, maybe it starts like threading or getting really pilly, and I have to toss it, that's not a bad thing that I'm throwing out something that I was using, because I got kind of double use out of it. Like, it was already trash. I already didn't want it. So extrapolate that to the cosplay. If you want to start working on a cosplay and you don't know really how to sew, maybe working with some lesser material is going to be good to give you confidence and, build your skills and things like that. But if you want to make a really, really nice costume and have to use a certain material to make a certain shimmer or something like that, you're going to have to do it eventually. Like, there's no way getting, like, if you need to use a resource to do something, you have to do it. And if you want the end result, even if you quote unquote waste something, there's no other option to do it. It's kind of like a making peace with, like, pretty much everything that you can do is going to use resources in some capacity, even if the resource is just time. Either do something or don't. You may have heard the phrase, you have to crack some eggs to make an omelet or whatever. In the same way with cosplay, you have to waste some thread to learn how to sew. I mean, take a look at my first couple YouTube videos. They weren't good. My first video on YouTube was not great. It just wasn't. I'm not going to say it wasn't that interesting. I was trying to be too professional, and now I'm just myself, and it's a lot better. I am constantly learning. I don't think my lighting setup is great, but like, I have a million to-dos every day with CFT, and this is decent, and I don't have a ring light, and so I have these really mediocre studio lights that I got, and I have this one behind me, and I wanted to start a YouTube channel like 3 years ago, but one of the fears that I had was, I don't want to waste time making bad content, and then it's hot dog water. What else was I going to do in that time? Play Candy Crush? I've actually never played Candy Crush. Do you know how many things I just Google every day? The other day, I wasted a decent amount of time looking at light switches online. I don't have a neutral wire in my house, and I'm trying to find some solution without redoing a lot of the wiring to have... Long story short, I need more switches to control lights, because you have to like walk across rooms and turn off lights, and it's stupid. Yeah, I guess I wasted time doing that, but it's really annoying in my house that I have to do that, so I'm going to spend my time resource to figure out a solution. So outside of Willard and Lyle, no one's going to be judging you for this. So the terms bad and good when it comes to cosplays are relative, and so something can be a lot worse, but that doesn't really matter. So if your costume is significantly worse than someone else's that you make and you lose a contest or you're comparing yourself, it's like, who cares? Sure, it's worse, but like, I'm a worse runner than Usain Bolt. The difference is objective, but the quality is subjective, if that makes sense. Comparison really is the thief of joy, and it's not just comparison externally, it's also comparison internally. Yes, you could have made the costume better. Yes, you could have spent less money. Yes, you could have sewed something better. Everything could always be better. Always. One reason why we say at Cosplays from Trash is never let anyone tell you your cosplays aren't good enough is because a sentiment that is still unfortunately pretty prevalent in the cosplay community. If you're not 100% accurate to the character in both the costume and in looks, that's bad. Let's say two people are cosplaying as Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman is typically a relatively muscular woman, a little bit on the thinner side. If there is a heavier set woman that is doing it, someone may say, you're not cosplaying as Wonder Woman because you are large. Or someone may say, well, this one's a more accurate representation of Wonder Woman because she's skinny. But it's like, well, she's not an Amazon. So are we going to play that game? Or we could be like, her hair is like 3 centimeters shorter. No matter how good the costume is, if you really want to, you could nitpick it. So like, why bother with all that stuff? You really only fall short when there is a goal to fall short of. If your goal is just to learn how to sew and you spent X amount of time and materials on it, but you learned how to sew, I mean, you met your goal. Even when you like lose a contest or something, you're not, I mean, sure, you're falling short of winning that contest, but if your goal was to have a good time or make a costume that you love or to get people to recognize you in the costume, you probably got all those goals. I would say one of my biggest weaknesses is I'm not really a patient person, and so sometimes that can come out in like grumpiness of just wanting things to work or just wanting things to be faster. This is cliche, but embrace the journey. This isn't a free check just to intentionally waste as much time, energy, materials, and money as possible, but just enjoy the process. Go do it. And if you're one of the people that says, no, I'm going to make it perfect before I start, you are wrong. Ha! And if you're saying, well, I did it one time, it's like, well, you're not going to do it the next time. The next time you try to learn a skill, it's not going to work. That sounded really antagonizing, but I'm just trying to hammer home the point of like, it's okay to waste things because it's impossible not to. Thank you, and see you next time. I don't remember getting a shopping cart, but there's a shopping cart in my house, and hot dog water. Speaking of that, in the song "Don't Stop Me Now," what is the significance of 200 degrees? Good time, start burning through the night. 200 degrees. Wait, why does he say that? I don't. I know that Gru wasn't named because he's a guru, but now I'm gonna call it a guru in my mind. I heard coffee spill, but I don't see it. It's like the Sisterhood of the Traveling Coffee Mugs. I think I had to watch that movie on the plane. Well, I didn't have to, but the person next to me was watching it, and it's just one of those things where you're like, okay, I'll watch it. I need to understand the physics behind. Maybe it explained it and I forgot, but I need to understand how it fit in. And Chappelle Roan's Hot to Go. What is the significance of 199 degrees? Because in Fahrenheit, boiling is 212. But you were always a younger person. Instead of Flappy Bird, they should make a game called Flappy Rat, where you just get to hang out with a rat in real life. It's called having a rat. That wasn't very hot to go with my mother. I kind of wish I had a second thumb. And then they call me Two Thumbs Kyle. Wait, I have two thumbs. They call me Three Thumbs Kyle. Well, I guess I'd have four thumbs if I had one on each hand. Well, two on each hand. I'm four thumbs. Four thumbs. That's a hard word to say.